a meditative journey beneath your feet into the slowest collisions, the deepest rumbles, and the quiet, restless shifting of Earth's skin. In this story, you'll lie back and listen to the secret conversations of countenance drifting across time. Nothing rushes here. Everything moves with the patience of mountains being born. You lie still, your eyes are closed. Your body rests on the coolness of your bed, or perhaps on the soft hush of grass, if you imagine it that way. But below you, far, far below, something ancient stirs, not quickly, not loudly, but always, beneath your spine, beneath the soles of your feet, beneath cities, forests, mountains, and oceans. The earth is alive with motion. It's easy to think the ground is solid, something permanent, unmoving, dependable. But if you were to peel back the layers, like turning the pages of a very old book, you'd discover something remarkable. Just beneath the skin of the world, the ground begins to soften, not into air, not into water, but into something in between. You sink gently into it now, down past the crust, Earth's outermost shell, cool and rigid like a scab over deeper warmth. Beneath it is the mantle, and the mantle flows, not like rivers do, not like the wind moves. Here, motion is slow, like the drift of glaciers, like the stretch of tree roots inching through soil, like the patient bloom of coral beneath a quiet sea. The mantle is rock, yes, but it behaves like something softer, more like taffy than stone, more like honey than metal, and yet it is strong. It holds the countenance above it, like invisible hands holding a puzzle of stone pieces. You drift deeper down here. Pressure builds gently against your thoughts. Heat rises in invisible waves. It's warm, but not uncomfortable. A comforting warmth, like the one you feel under heavy blankets or beside a fireplace in winter. This is Earth's inner heat, and it is old as the planet itself. It comes from three places: the energy left from Earth's violent birth, the slow decay of radioactive elements hidden in rock, and the constant pulsing compression of gravity itself. And this heat moves things. You might picture it like this: as warm rock rises and cool rock sinks, great circular patterns swirl through the mantle, like the turning of invisible gears. These movements are called convection currents, and they are what drive the great drifting plates above. Earth's outer crust isn't one smooth shell. It's broken, cracked into enormous segments. These are the tectonic plates, like lily pads floating on a pond of warm syrup. They drift on top of the mantle. You live on one of them. So does everyone else. So does everything. You might not feel it, but your plate is moving. Slowly, yes, only centimeters each year, as if your house were crawling across the surface of a giant. But over time, that movement changes the world. Mountains rise, oceans open, earthquakes shiver. All of it begins with this quiet river of rock beneath you. You keep sinking, gently, floating in warmth and weightlessness. Down here, the rock is not red or grey as it is on the surface, but glowing orange, amber, gold, filled with slow fire. You drift through it like a feather on thick wind. Above you, the crust is far behind, thin and fragile compared to the vastness below. The mantle is deep, stretching from just beneath the crust all the way to Earth's core. It makes up 84% of the planet's volume. You are inside Earth's body now, in the warm, beating muscle of its motion. And everywhere you look, if you choose to imagine looking, the rock is flowing, not fast. Never fast, This is the realm of patience. A single cycle from rising warmth to sinking coolness can take millions of years. A mountain that rises from this movement may take longer than all of written history to form. There is no hurry. There never was. The mantle does not roar. It hums. It does not snap or shatter. It breathes, and through this breath, everything else on earth is shaped over eons, over eras, over the slow stretch of time that makes up the planet's quiet heartbeat. You are still sinking, but now you notice something else. The drifting plates above you, some slide past one another, some pull apart, some crash. Where they touch, they create, they destroy, they rebuild. But it is not chaos. It is choreography. And the dancer is this, the slow, molten rhythm of the mantle. You float beside it, watching as rock becomes movement, becomes heat, becomes future, at the boundary between the upper and lower. Mantle, you sense a change. The pressure increases. The heat thickens. Minerals transform under the weight. Some scientists believe this area holds superplumes, giant columns of hotter rock rising from the deepest parts of Earth, like slow fountains feeding volcanoes far above. These are the deep roots of islands and continents, Hawaii, Iceland, the Galapagos. Their stories all begin here, whispered upward through miles of shifting stone. You realize slowly that Earth builds from below. Always, everything familiar to you, mountains, valleys, coastlines, began as motion inside. Something you cannot see. A world of shadow and heat, of pressure and patience. That river of rock, always flowing, always shaping. You drift now in silence, listening to the low hum of Earth's interior. It is not a song. It is not a voice. It is something slower than language, but somehow clearer. It says, nothing is still. Not really. Even the most solid things you know. The ground beneath your home, the cliffs that line the ocean, the peaks that pierce the sky, even they are slowly moving, changing, becoming something new, and it all begins here. You rise now, gently, as if exhaled, back up through the soft glow of the mantle, back toward the crust, that thin, rigid shell where you began. It seems fragile now, a shell of eggshells floating on a sea of motion. You pass through it like a thought surfacing from dream, and you are lying still again, back in your room, or your meadow, or your imagined cave beneath the stars. But you are not the same now. You know what lies beneath. You know that every stillness hides a story. Every silence holds a pulse. Every quiet ground is a raft on a river of fire and stone, and though you cannot feel it, you are always, always drifting. The continents you walk on, they too are moving. They too are floating. They too are broken, scarred, and beautiful, cracked along lines you cannot see, but always healing, always reshaping, always speaking through tremble and fold. What does that surface look like? What stories are told in the places where the plates touch, where they press, slide, grind, or pull apart? What happens at the edges of these drifting giants? Breathe in, breathe out. You are ready to walk upon Earth's skin now, and to see how it breaks and how it heals. You stand again at the surface, but it's different now. You know too much to call it still. The ground beneath your feet is not one piece. It only pretends to be. Beneath the cities and forests, deserts and oceans, Earth's crust is broken, not from damage, but by design. It is made of massive, puzzle-like slabs called tectonic plates. You are standing on one right now. Perhaps it is the Eurasian plate. If you're in Europe or Asia, perhaps it's the African plate, if you imagine yourself near the cradle of humanity, or the Pacific plate, the largest of them all, floating beneath vast oceans and volcanic arcs. These plates fit together awkwardly, jagged edges kissing, pressing, shifting. There are 7 major plates and many smaller ones, all constantly in motion. They drift across the molten softness of the mantle you visited before. Slowly, ever so slowly, but never at rest. You begin to float now, just above the Earth's crust, like a gentle wind brushing over mountain tops and plains. The view below is mesmerizing. You can see the hairline fractures, the seams where plates meet. You hover over boundaries. These places are neither here nor there. They are thresholds. Some plates pull apart, creating cracks that fill with molten rock, birthing new land at the ocean's bottom. Some plates slide sideways, in long, tense brushes that shiver the ground, and others, the most dramatic of all, crash head-on. One pushes down, one lifts up, and from that clash, mountains are born. You begin at a boundary where 2 plates are pulling apart. This is called a divergent boundary. You glide down, slowly, into the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Here lies the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, a massive, underwater mountain range that runs like a stitched seam down the ocean's length. It is here that the Eurasian plate and the North American plate part ways, millimeter by millimeter, century by century, and from their parting, new rock rises. From deep below, molten magma oozes up to fill the gap. As it cools, it hardens into new crust. The ocean floor widens, and the plates keep drifting. It is quiet here, no earthquakes, just a slow, ceaseless birth of Earth itself. You press your ear in your imagination to the black volcanic rock. You hear nothing, but you feel the hum, the deep, silent engine of creation. Now, gently, you drift sideways, thousands of miles away. Another kind of meeting waits. You find yourself above the west coast of South America, where the plate dives beneath the South American plate. This is a convergent boundary. One plate is pulled downward, sinking into the hot mantle. The other is lifted up, bent and crumpled like paper rising into mountains. This is how the Andes were born. Every inch of them is a record of collision, of slow violence turned into heightened snow. You watch, in your mind, as the ocean floor bends downward. The plate disappears, inch by inch, into the planet. Where it melts, magma forms. Some of that magma pushes upward, creating volcanoes along the edge of the continent, a fiery necklace tracing Earth's deepest fractures. The ground here is not quiet. It rumbles, it speaks in earthquakes, sharp, sudden reminders that these plates are alive. The tension builds for decades, sometimes centuries, and then is released in seconds, but not always. Some boundaries are more patient. You glide north now, along the San Andreas Fault in California. This is a transformed boundary where 2 plates, the Pacific plate and the North American plate, slide past each other. Here, the motion is horizontal. The plates grind in opposite directions. They snag, they catch, they hold, and then, when the pressure can no longer be contained, they slip. These slips can be small or catastrophic, but always the land shifts. Fences break, roads twist, rivers are rerouted by inches, and yet the plates keep moving. As you float along this fault, you realize something strange. The landscape bears the scars, but also the resilience. There are forests growing right over fault lines, cities built atop the very seams of the planet. It is as if the earth invites life even where it trembles. You drift east now, over Iceland, where a divergent boundary rises above sea level. Two plates pull apart here, too, but you can walk between them. You can stand with one foot on North America, and the other on Eurasia, with nothing beneath but the soft roar of Earth's breath. Cracks open, new rock flows. The land stretches, ever so slightly. It is a place where creation is visible, where you can touch the planet's unfinished thoughts. Then, further south, you pass over the East African Rift, a place where a continent itself is breaking apart. Slowly, patiently, Africa is splitting. Lakes widen, valleys deepen. Someday, in millions of years, a new ocean will form here, and what is now one land will become two. You begin to understand. Earth is not a finished sculpture, it is a living canvas. Every plate boundary is a brushstroke, some bold, some hidden, some made of silence, others made of fire, and all across this shifting skin. The earth speaks a language of motion. You float now, toward the Himalayas, a boundary of unimaginable power. Here, the Indian plate has been pushing into the Eurasian plate for tens of millions of years. It has not stopped. It will not stop. From that collision, the Himalayas rise, the tallest mountains on Earth, each year. They grow a little higher. You glide above snowy peaks, carved by pressure. You see folded rocks that once lay beneath ancient seas. You feel the pulse of collision in the frozen air, and yet, even here, in a place born of crashing plates, there is peace. Prayer, flags flutter, snow leopards move quietly across our IDGLINE. As the mountains don't shake every day, the earth does not shout without reason. Even its violence is shaped by rhythm, by order. The cracks in the earth are not signs of weakness. They are the paths through which the planet breathes and heals. You return, gently, to your resting place. Wherever that may be tonight, you lie still, but your mind drifts on. You imagine Earth's crust as a great mosaic, each plate a tile, each boundary a seam. Some seams stretch, some tear. Some are stitched back together by volcanoes and new rock. Some are laid with memory, folded like cloth dot, and all of them move. You begin to sense how deeply connected things are. A tremor in Alaska may echo the same process that raises mountains in Chile. The plates are not separate stories, they are chapters. In a single book, one written slowly. In pressure and time, you breathe in, you breathe out. The ground feels a little less still now, but somehow more trustworthy, because you understand it, because even broken things, you've learned, are always mending. Cracks do not mean failure. They mean motion. They mean possibility. They mean Earth is still becoming. But what happens when continents don't just shift? They charge. What if land itself becomes a traveler, crossing oceans to meet another? What if the slowest collision creates the tallest silence? That's a story for another night, or perhaps for the one just ahead. Close your eyes, not just to rest, but to dream deeper than sleep. Tonight, you are traveling far back, beyond memory, beyond maps, beyond even the earliest footprints. The Earth is younger now. The continents are adrift in unfamiliar places. They do not yet look like the world you know. They are fragments of a supercontinent long since shattered, a slow unweaving of land across a molten sea. Tonight you follow one of them, a traveler named India, not the country as you know it now, but a piece of continental crust vast, ancient, and determined, drifting northward across a wide ocean called the Tethys Sea. It's quiet as you glide beside it, moving as slowly as continents do. About 5 centimeters a year, the pace of a fingernail growing, the rate at which stories unfold when told by stone, for millions of years. India drifts, alone, purposeful, carried by the patient push of the mantle below. No sails, no engines, just heat and time and invisible force. You float beside it, through eras of changing skies and vanished creatures. The ocean widens, then narrows. The sun arches high and low across Earth's curve. And then, at last, something begins to rise. On the horizon, a continent. A destination. India is approaching Asia. Not fast, not loud, but with the full weight of a continent. You pause now, hold your breath, because something extraordinary is about to happen. The sea between them, the ancient Tethys, begins to close. Not with a splash, but with a groan of stone folding into stone. The ocean floor buckles and dives beneath Asia. Sediments from the sea are scraped upward like paint on a palette. And then, like a deep inhale held too long, the land begins to rise. This is collision, but it is not the sudden crash you might imagine. No shattering, no explosion. It is slow, it is unrelenting. It is the weight of one land climbing onto another, and from that weight, from that pressure, the Himalayas are born. You hover over them now, white peaks stretching toward the stars, catching the first light of morning across a frozen sky. Each ridge is a fold, each summit a lifted secret. These are not just mountains, they are memories, memories of seabeds, once warm and filled with life, now frozen high above the clouds. Fossils of marine creatures have been found at the tops of Himalayan peaks. Remnants of coral and shells that once lay at the bottom of the Tethys Sea. You picture that, seashells cradled in snow, proof that what is high was once low, proof that the earth does not forget, it transforms. The Himalayas are still rising, even now. The collision has not stopped. India continues to press north, inch by inch, pushing the land higher, but the rise is not smooth. There is strain, there is tension. The crust resists, and then yields. Earthquakes rattle the silence. You feel one now, not as fear, but as rhythm, a tremble beneath your feet. Like a sigh beneath heavy blankets, it is the earth adjusting to its own slow architecture. You drift now, just beneath the crust, into the zone where plates grind together. Here, rocks do not break easily. They bend first. They fold into strange shapes, twisted ribbons, curled seams, buried layers once flat, now vertical. These folds are the calligraphy of collision, each one written in a language of time and compression. You pass through rock, pressed so tightly that it shines, metamorphosed by pressure into new forms. Slate, schist, gneiss, each a song rewritten under heat and force. And above it all, the surface breaks and lifts, creating peaks that scrape the edge of atmosphere. But these mountains are not eternal. Wind begins to carve them. Ice scrapes their flanks. Rivers race down their sides, carrying tiny pieces away. Even as they rise, they fall. A balance, collision builds. Erosion humbles, and between them, the shape of the world is drawn. You drift now across other collisions, the Alps, born of Africa's slow push into Europe, the Zagros Mountains, shaped by Iran and Arabia's embrace, the Appalachians, old and softened, once as tall as the Himalayas, now worn into rolling green dot, each one a monument to pressure, each one a memory of a meeting, and all of them whisper, land is not still. You imagine the continents as dancers slow, silent, circling one another over millions of years. They touch, they retreat, they clash, they create, and the music is played. Not in minutes, but in millennia. It is a music made of magma, mantle and motion. You lie still, and yet your body remembers motion. You have bones that once came from seas, calcium gathered by life, drawn from ocean to stone, from stone to body. You are part of this cycle. Your spine rests on the crust of a drifting world. Your breath rises into skies carved by mountains. You are made of earth, and earth is made of movement. You float once, more above the Himalayas. They gleam beneath you, moonlit and vast, quiet giants, slow builders, story keepers, and in their silence something waits. A stillness that is not empty, but full, because every moment of stillness at a collision zone is a moment of tension. The plates do not stop, they press, they pause. And when the pressure grows, to great they release. This is the origin of earthquakes, the sudden unwinding of tension built up over centuries. But not all release is sudden. Some is soft, some is slow, and some, like the rising of the Himalayas, is barely noticed by the human eye, but felt, always felt. You begin to wonder, how many collisions are happening now? How many places on Earth are holding their breath? What if the next rumble is already rising deep within a fault line, silent and unseen? You are drifting still, but your mind begins to listen more carefully, because even in silence there is weight. Even in stillness there is power, and now you begin to hear it. The slow exhale of the earth reshaping itself, the quiet lifting of stone into sky, the long breath of countenance colliding, folding, remembering. You close your eyes again, the Himalayas fade, the continents fall back into their patient drift, but the thought remains, gently. If this is what happens when plates collide, ... what happens where they pull apart, where the earth opens, where something new is born from the deep? That, too, is part of the story, and it's waiting just beneath the waves. Tonight you sink again, not into the warmth of blankets, but into something deeper. You close your eyes, and the ocean opens. You're falling, gently, like a snowflake through water, past the swell of waves, past the flickering shafts of sunlight that reach down like long fingers, past the drifting schools of fish and the cold stillness of the twilight. Zone ... and still you descend. The water grows darker, colder, but never harsh. This is a calm descent, a slow breath inward from the planet's chest. You are heading to the bottom of the sea, and there, spread out beneath you like a sleeping giant's back, lies something vast and quiet and alive. The ocean floor, it is not flat, it is not empty. It is filled with ridges and rifts, trenches and towers, all sculpted by time and pressure, all part of the great tectonic conversation that shapes the earth. You touch down softly at the mid-Atlantic ridge. It stretches like a mountain range beneath the water, taller than the Alps in places, longer than any chain on land. A seam that runs through the heart of the ocean, splitting it from north to south. You lie on your back and float just above it, weightless in the dark. Here, two plates drift apart. The Eurasian plate moves east, the North American plate west, and in the thin gap between them, magma rises, not in a rush, but in a slow, glowing exhale from the planet's interior. The rock that emerges here is basalt, dark, dense, and born of fire. It oozes out, then cools quickly in the cold ocean water, forming new crust. This is a divergent boundary, a place of quiet creation. The earth is building new skin, not in cities, not in forests, but deep beneath the waves, in darkness and silence. Every year, the ocean floor grows a little wider, and you are here to witness it. You reach out, not with hands, but with thought, and touch the fresh rock. It is warm, just barely, still remembering the fire it came from. You drift beside it as it spreads outward, pushed by the steady rhythm of magma rising and crust cooling. It's like watching a scroll unroll in slow motion, a story written in stone, sentence by sentence, over millions of years. And there's something else. The rocks here whisper, not in words, not in sounds, but in magnetism. As molten rock hardens, tiny minerals inside it line up with Earth's magnetic field, like compass needles frozen in place. Over time, as the magnetic field reverses, north becoming south, and then north. Again, the rocks preserve these changes like chapters in a geologic diary. Stripes of magnetism run parallel to the ridge, mirrored on each side. Scientists read them like fingerprints, like music from them. We've learned that Earth's magnetic field flips, slowly, unpredictably, a quiet mystery layered beneath our feet. You rise slightly now, floating just above the ridge. You see narrow cracks, rift valleys, where the plates are pulling apart most directly. Here, life clings to heat, all around you. Hydrothermal vents spew mineral-rich water into the ocean. Black chimneys rise from the seafloor, belching clouds of superheated darkness. And around these vents, despite the cold, despite the pressure, despite the absence of sunlight, life thrives. Tiny shrimp, white crabs, strange worms with red plumes. There, the world is not powered by sunlight, but by chemosynthesis, a process fueled by the chemical richness of the vent water. They survive not from the sky, but from the earth's own breath. You marvel at this, life blooming from stone and steam. You drift past a black smoker, its chimney hissing quietly. You imagine the early earth when life first began and wonder if it started somewhere like this, in the dark, in the heat, in the silence, a heartbeat beneath the ocean. You glide west now, following the path of the spreading seafloor. The basalt cools as it moves away from the ridge. It thickens. Ages, you see fractures and faults, like wrinkles forming as the crust grows older. Some cracks are deep, some are shallow, but all are part of the spreading story. And then, far from the ridge, you find trenches, long, deep scars in the ocean floor, places where the crust is pulled back into the earth, but not yet. Not here, not tonight. Tonight is for beginnings, for birth, for the quiet of stone becoming surface. You think again of how much is hidden. The ocean covers more than 70% of the planet, and beneath that, the seafloor covers more ground than all. The continents combined, but we know so little of it. We've mapped the surface of the moon more precisely than the deep ocean. What secrets lie here? What ridges, what vents, what whispers of reversal and drift? You lie still again, this time on the young crust itself. You press your ear to it, and though you hear nothing, you feel time. This rock will someday become land. It will be pushed and lifted, cracked and folded. It may rise into mountains or disappear into trenches. But tonight it is only new. Tonight it is still warm, still waiting, And as you lie there, you realize something important. Creation does not always shout. Sometimes it happens slowly, in silence, in shadow, in basalt, cooling in the dark. Even now, as you rest, new earth is forming beneath the sea. Your countenance ride on plates that were once like this, born at mid-ocean ridges, moved outward, lifted by mantle breath. The floor beneath your home may have once been deep ocean. Stone is patient. It forgets nothing. And when you rise again, softly, through the ocean layers and back into the starlit air, you carry that patience with you. The sea floor drifts on behind you, silent, spreading, remembering. But as it moves outward, something must give. What is created must someday be returned. And in some places, far from the ridges, the earth does not open. It folds inward. It takes back what it once gave. You drift toward the place where the crust sinks into darkness, where one plate disappears beneath another dot. You are leaving the cradle of new earth and heading into the dance of subduction. You drift now to the edge of the ocean floor, not the surface water, but the edge of the crust itself, where one piece of the planet slips beneath another. You are arriving at a place where the earth folds into itself, where stone returns home. This is a subduction zone, a place where the dance of plates takes a darker turn. Here, the seafloor does not stretch outward forever. It reaches a boundary and yields. The colder, denser oceanic plate bends downward beneath a lighter continental plate, curving into the depths of the earth like a ribbon slipping into shadow. You float just above the boundary. Watching this slow surrender, there is no panic here. No screaming, no fire at the surface. But beneath the calm, the motion is immense. The subducting plate, heavy with age, cooled by centuries beneath the ocean, carries with it a cargo of memories, sediments, water, fossils, the bones of sea, creatures, ancient lava flows. All of it is pooled beneath the continent, vanishing inch by inch into the mantle. It is not destruction, it is return, like autumn leaves, falling into the soil to become trees again. Like breath returning to the wind, the plate begins to melt, slowly. Under the growing heat and pressure, not all at once, it resists, it transforms. Water released from the descending rock lowers the melting point of the mantle above, triggering the rise of magma. This rising magma doesn't always reach the surface, but when it does, it creates volcanoes, arcs of fire that echo the shape of the subduction zone below. You drift now to the Pacific. Ring of fire, a chain of volcanic arcs and deep ocean trenches circling the Pacific like a necklace of warning. And wonder, Indonesia, Japan, Alaska, the Andes, all born from this dance of descent and rise. You descend into the Mariana Trench, the deepest place on Earth, here. The Pacific Plate dives beneath the smaller Mariana Plate. The trench yawns beneath you, a gash in the seafloor, nearly 11 kilometers deep. You float above it like a leaf above a canyon. Down in the dark, the pressure grows immense, but the water holds its silence. No light from the sun has ever reached this place. And yet life exists even here. Strange, patient, glowing. You drift lower still into the space just above the descending plate. It groans softly as it bends. You can almost feel the tension like a bowstring pulled taut. Some of this tension is released in earthquakes, not gentle ones, not always small. Subduction zones are home to the world's most powerful quakes, megathrust earthquakes, where years, even centuries of pressure are released in seconds. You remember the stories: Chile, 1960, Alaska, 1964, and Sumatra, 2004, moments when the planet exhaled violently, moments born from this slow descent. But in between those outbursts, there is quiet, there is waiting, there is the slow press of one plate against another, a pressure that holds for years like a breath beneath stone. You move with the descending plate now, following it into the mantle. It does not fall forever. As it descends, it bends and twists. Some of its minerals transform under pressure. Olivine becomes spinel, then changes again. The heat increases, and in some places, the plate fragments, breaking apart like shattered bone inside flesh. But even in breaking, it becomes part of the mantle's cycle. You watch as pieces melt into magma. Some of that magma begins to rise again, buoyed by heat, moving toward the surface. It will someday form part of a volcano. It will rise through the crust. It will explode as ash. It will cool as lava. It will become rock. It will become part of the crust again. This is not destruction. This is recycling. On a planetary scale, you rise now, carried by the heat of rising magma, toward the surface above. A volcanic mountain emerges in the distance, a stratovolcano, sharp and symmetrical, built from layers of ash and lava flows. You hover above its peak. Steam escapes from its summit. Snow clings to its slopes. Beneath it, magma chambers churn in silence. You imagine the eruption not to fear it, but to understand it. The pressure builds slowly, day by day, as magma accumulates. Gas dissolves, then separates, then presses outward, until, at last, the mountain can no longer contain it, and then eruption, not always sudden. Sometimes it begins with small earthquakes, a puff of ash, a faint rumble, but sometimes it arrives like a thunderclap of fire. Lava races down slopes. Ash darkens the sky. Lightning flashes within the plume. You remember Mount St. Helens, Krakatoa, Mount Pinatubo, moments when the earth spoke loudly, reminding us of what moves beneath our feet. But not all volcanoes erupt with violence. Some are gentle, like those in the Aleutians or the Andes. Some release their pressure slowly, through steady oozes of lava, through soft hisses of steam. Even fire can be patient. You drift now to the Andes Mountains, where the Nazca Plate continues its slow dive beneath South America. Each year, it pulls a little more rock downward. Each year, magma rises in response. Each year, the Andes grow, ever so slightly. Mountains from motion, volcanoes from return, fire from falling stone. You hover above a village nestled in the valley below. People sleep as the volcano breathes. They plant crops in ash-rich soil. They warm themselves beside stones shaped by eruption centuries ago. Life continues, built upon ancient fire, and you, still drifting, begin to understand something deeper. Subduction is not destruction. It is part of Earth's circulatory system, a way to move heat, to recycle rock, to drive the dance of crust and core. Without it, the plates would not move. Mountains would not rise. Volcanoes would not erupt. The mantle would grow stagnant. The surface would stop changing. Subduction is not an end. It is how Earth breathes out and in. You float back now, slowly across the boundary. You watch as the plate continues its descent, undisturbed by your passing, and you listen. There is no roar, no scream, only rhythm, the rhythm of loss, of return, of transformation, and somewhere above, the crust stretches and splits, welcoming new stone into the world. The cycle continues. You return again to the surface, where continents move like quiet rafts, where mountains sleep under stars, and where the ground waits. But you know now what waits below. You know the deep choreography that shapes the land. You know that even in descent there is purpose. And now you wonder, what becomes of the mountains that rise? What memories do they hold in their folded rocks? What stories do they whisper from their peaks? You are ready to climb them slowly and listen. You rise again, not fast, not with urgency, but with the slow breath of the earth itself. From beneath subduction zones and volcanic arcs, you are carried upward on the back of something vast and silent, something ancient and folded. You are climbing a mountain, but not in steps. You are floating, drifting, listening, because mountains are not just stone. They are memories. They remember every push, every press, every fold and fracture. They are shaped by motion and marked by time. A kind of geological diary written in the slow language of uplift and erosion. You land gently on a ridge. The air is thinner here, cooler. The sky opens wider, but what draws your attention isn't the view. It's the stone beneath your feet. You kneel and touch it. It is not smooth, not uniform. It is layered, and in those layers is story. You are standing on a folded mountain range, one born not of volcanic fire, but of tectonic pressure. Two plates met here. Neither would yield. And so the land crumpled, rose, and became this. You run your hand along a slab of tilted rock. The lines within it once lay flat, horizontal beds of sediment laid down by ancient rivers, oceans, and winds. But now they are tilted skyward. Why? Because the crust bent, under stress, under pressure, because the earth remembers everything that happens to it. This is a fold, a gentle arc in stone, frozen over time, and around it are others, synclines and anticlines, dips and peaks, waves of rock that once flowed like cloth and now stand frozen in place. You walk between them. You feel as if you're strolling through the wrinkles of a sleeping giant, each one formed by the slow furrowing of the crust beneath invisible fingers. Of force. Every mountain you see is a result of pressure and time, but not all rise in the same way. Some are thrust up from collisions, like the Himalayas, where India and Eurasia press together still. Others form when faults lift blocks of crust skyward, like the Sierra Nevada, tilted and bold. Some erupt into being volcanoes, born of magma, but the mountains you walk through now are folded. They are quiet, they whisper, and if you listen closely, they speak of oceans. Yes, oceans, because many mountains, though now dry and high, began as seed beds. You find fossils here, tiny spirals of ammonites, shells of creatures long gone, embedded in stone now perched thousands of meters above sea level. Once, this ridge was the floor of a shallow sea. Now, it kisses the sky. You close your eyes and picture it, the seabed accumulating sediments over millennia. Sand, clay, the remains of coral and plankton settling in layers. Then the slow, invisible push of plates, the rising, the folding, the transformation of seabed into summit. And you realize, mountains carry oceans inside them. They are not just stone, they are time. You press your ear to a slab of marble. It was once limestone, made from compressed coral and shells under heat and pressure. It changed, metamorphosed into something new. This is what mountains do. They take what was, and through strain, they transform slate from shale, gneiss from granite, schist from mud, every layer, every mineral, every sparkle of mica in the rock. It all tells a story. You drift higher now. The wind hums in your ears, not loud but constant, a reminder that even air can carve stone. Given time, you see it all around you. Erosion at work, ice expanding in cracks, slowly widening them, rain washing grains away, one storm at a time. Glaciers carving valleys with slow, grinding grace. You think mountains are permanent, but they are not. They rise and they fall. You look to the Appalachians, soft, green, rounded, older than bones, once as tall as the Himalayas, now worn down by time. You realize mountains age, not like people do, but they soften, they forget sharpness, they slouch under the weight of memory still, they remember in their folded rocks. You find layers tilted at strange angles. You imagine the force it took to fold, solid stone like paper. You imagine the temperature, the pressure, the years. You find rocks from different origins, jammed together, pieces of crust that once lived on opposite sides of an ocean, now fused in a mountain's heart. This is called a terrain, a fragment of crust carried by a plate, docked like a ship into another continent. Mountains are mosaics, assembled from pieces, each piece a journey, each journey a clue. You pause now near the summit. You look down. The valleys below are green, rivers weaving like threads, but up here it's still and bare. The rock is exposed. Honest, you touch it. Cool, grainy, unmoving, and yet still moving. You know now that even mountains are not still, they move, but in a language you cannot see, centimeters per year. Their growth is offset by erosion, by gravity's gentle tug. They rise and fall in cycles of millions of years, and in every stage they hold memory, a kind of deep time, pressed into stone. You think of the oldest mountain ranges, the Barberton Greenstone Belt in Africa, the Isua Rocks in Greenland, 3 billion years old or more, mountains that have been folded, melted, buried, and reborn again and again. Stone with memory, older than life. You begin to feel smaller, but not in a bad way. You are part of this. Your bones carry calcium once drawn from ocean sediments. Your breath contains carbon once stored in limestone. You are made of mountains, and mountains are made of motion. You lie down now on a high plateau, where wind rushes low and steady. You look up at the stars, and the mountain beneath you breathes, not like lungs do, but like earth does, a slow rise, a slower fall, a memory held in every fold. You listen. There is something still moving below you, not fast, not violent, but deep. Tectonic pressure continues. The plates still press, the folds still shift. You wonder, now, not just how mountains rise, but how they release. Not all motion builds. Some slips, some slides, some sides turn to shudders. Not all earthquakes are sudden. Some take years to unfold. You roll onto your side. A breeze passes. The mountain doesn't speak, but you know it's listening. You close your eyes and prepare to feel the smallest quakes. You lie still, but your thoughts drift downward, once again, beneath the crust. Not far this time, just enough to sense the strain. You return not to the dramatic places, not the roaring volcanoes or mountain collisions, but to a quieter seam in the earth's great shell, a fault line, but one that does not crack or crash. Here, motion happens slowly, so slowly, in fact, it almost goes unnoticed. Almost you are here to notice it. You begin to descend, not through heat this time, but through tension. It wraps the rock like invisible thread, coiling tighter year after year. This place has not moved in a while. But that doesn't mean it's still. A slow earthquake is beginning. They're called slow slip events, and they're as real as any quake. But they unfold over weeks or months instead of seconds. Imagine pressing your palms together with steady pressure now. Instead of a sudden shove, let one hand begin to slide, not all at once, not with violence, but with resistance, with friction, with a whisper of movement that builds and spreads. That's what's happening here. You float just above. The boundary beneath you, the edge of a plate, begins to shift, a few centimeters at a time. Over days, the movement is silent. No houses fall, no bridges shake, but the land adjusts. And in that quiet adjustment, pressure is released. Pressure that might otherwise build into something far more abrupt. You hover beneath the coast of Japan. Here, slow slip events are known, monitored, studied beneath the island. The Philippine sea plate sinks under the Eurasian plate. The motion is not smooth, it's sticky, locked in places, slipping in others. Every few months or years, one patch will creep forward. Sensors detect the shift, instruments listen, but to most above ground, life continues without interruption. Still, the earth has moved. A few centimeters may not sound like much, but in geologic terms, it is dirt, it is tension unwinding, it is the crust breathing out. You drift now to New Zealand, to the Hikurangi subduction zone, where similar slow slips unfold. You float beneath the North Island, where sensors on the seafloor detect shifts in pressure. One slip here lasted 2 years. 2 years of gentle, constant motion. 2 years of strain sliding quietly past. 2 years of tectonic murmurs instead of shouts. And you realize, not all quakes are disasters. Some are releases, some are gifts, chances for the earth to move gently instead of suddenly. You pass through. One now a zone where the rock is shearing slowly. The friction is still there. But instead of snapping, the plates are stretching a slow slide, like syrup oozing across a plate. You reach out to feel it. The motion is subtle, like the shift of blankets as you breathe in your sleep. This is the rhythm of the movement without rupture, and yet it can still have meaning. In some places, slow slip events may be precursors, early warnings of larger earthquakes building nearby. In others, they relieve stress, preventing major breaks. Science doesn't yet know which is which in every case, but you don't need to predict. You only need to observe. You drift again, this time to Alaska, here at the interface of the Pacific and North American plates. Researchers have recorded slow quakes lasting months, some invisible, some accompanied by tremor, soft vibrations, deep within the crust, like the purring of rock under stress. You listen for it now, not a bang, not a shake, but a low, persistent hum. This is the earth's murmur, a whisper of motion too slow to fear and too eat to ignore. You begin to see the value in these invisible shifts. They remind you that movement doesn't always mean damage, that change can be graceful. You float above a map, lines traced in color across the continents, marking fault zones and subduction trenches. But not all lines are red with risk. Some are grey, soft, quiet, places where the earth moves like breath, like tide, like thought. You return to the idea of the mountain, a peak you once believed must be still, but it is not. Mountains rise slowly, plates press slowly, faults slip slowly, all beneath our notice, unless we choose to feel it. You lie flat again, atop a gentle slope. You place your hand on the ground. You do not feel shaking, but you know it's there somewhere. You know that even silence is full of motion, that stillness is an illusion, made by limited time. You close your eyes and imagine the timeline stretching out. Hours become days. Days become years. And in that expanded time, you see the fault move. Just a little, but enough. It is like watching an iceberg drift. It is like watching two ships part ways. Not in hurry, but in understanding. You ask yourself a quiet question. What else moves like this? What other forces in your world are slow but real? Grief, healing, love, the shift from night into dawn, the understanding of a truth too deep for quick words. You are floating now through that space, through slow change, through invisible earthquakes, and with each breath you begin to feel the beauty of it, the grace of what is not seen, but is always happening. You pass by another fault now. Sensors here are measuring the uplift of a coastline. Over 10 years, the land has risen just a few millimeters. Not enough for the eye to see, but enough for science to track. Enough to reshape a tide pool. Enough to change the angle of a river. Enough to remind you that the world is always adjusting, even when you sleep, especially when you sleep. You drift further inland, away from coasts, away from trenches, and still. The earth shifts, the crust rebounds from glaciers long gone. The land adjusts to the loss of weight. Mountains lifted by ice begin to rise again, slowly, like breath returning. You are amazed at how much happens in the absence of noise, at how much movement is possible without explosion, and how deeply the planet listens to itself. And now, as you return to the surface, to your quiet, resting body, you bring with you that rhythm. You lie still. You let your weight settle, but beneath you, the planet continues its gentle stretching, its slow slip conversations, its whispered rebalancing, and you, like the faults below, are always adjusting. Now, you ask, what drives all this? What force keeps the mantle moving, the plates shifting, the quakes slipping fast or slow? What engine hums at the heart of all this motion? The answer lies, deeper still, in the planet's warmest breath, in the heat that drives it all. Close your eyes, sink down once more, not into darkness, but into warmth. This time, you're not tracing a fault or folding through mountains. You're going deeper, much deeper, past the crust, past the upper mantle, down into the quiet furnace that powers it all. You're entering the engine room of Earth, and here you will find no smoke, no coal, no flame in the way we know it. The heat that drives the world is different, older, quieter, persistent. It does not roar, it glows at first. The temperature builds gently, like the warmth of sun beneath your skin. You remember the convection, currents in the mantle, that slow, swirling river of stone you once floated through. But what sets that river in motion? Where does the energy come from? That is what you're here to see. You descend through the mantle, deeper than before. The rock grows denser, the pressure builds. Yet the warmth surrounds you, not with burning, but with embrace. It is ancient. Some of this heat has been here since the planet was born, over 4.5 billion years ago. Leftover energy from the violent collisions that formed Earth, when planetesimals slammed together, releasing unimaginable force. You can almost hear it still, a faint echo of the planet's birth. But that's not all. Another part of the heat comes from radioactive decay. Tiny, steady events unfolding inside, minerals rich with uranium, thorium, and potassium. These atoms break apart over time, releasing energy like miniature sunrises hidden inside stone. Billions of them, every second, humming quietly, adding their warmth to the whole. You pass through a layer where this decay is strongest, a belt of rock alive with time. This is Earth's heartbeat, though it moves far slower than yours. You descend further, the mantle gives way to the outer core, a sea of liquid iron and nickel. It flows, it churns, it is hot, over 4,000 degrees Celsius, nearly as hot as the surface of the sun, and it is moving. You drift into this metallic ocean. It is heavy, but not still. Currents swirl through. Its spirals of molten metal, twisted by Earth's rotation, shaped by the cooling of the inner core. This motion generates Earth's magnetic field, a force that reaches far beyond the surface, protecting us from solar wind and cosmic radiation. But for now, you're more interested in the heat, because this is where convection begins in earnest. Hot metal rises from the deeper regions of the core. Cooler metal sinks from above. And so, like soup simmering in a pot, the outer core circulates. These rising waves of heat move energy upward, into the mantle, into the crust, into the plates above. You return, briefly, to the mantle, where heat causes rock to soften, flow, rise, and fall. You watch as plumes of hot mantle rise in tall, slow columns, mantle plumes like breath, exhaled from the core. Some of these plumes pierce the crust and form hotspots, volcanoes like Hawaii, isolated and persistent, not bound to any plate boundary. You drift alongside one now, a column of rising heat, tens of kilometers wide, moving so slowly it could take 1,000,000 years to reach the surface. And yet it will. It always does. Because heat rises, it expands, becomes buoyant, and pushes against the weight above it. This upward push sets the plates in motion, and as those plates move, as they spread, collide, subduct, and slip, they carry the surface of the Earth with them. All because of this warmth deep within the planet. You feel it now, not as heat on your skin, but as a force, a motivation. The Earth moves because it is warm inside. You pause now, somewhere between the core and the crust. The pressure here is almost unimaginable. Millions of times what you feel at the surface, but your mind is calm, your body is weightless, and your awareness expands. You begin to understand how heat, though invisible, can sculpt a world. It shapes the rise of continents, the drift of oceans, the pulse of earthquakes. It builds mountain ranges. It splits apart supercontinents. It feeds volcanoes. It causes the seafloor to spread, the plates to move, the rock to fold, all from within. You recall how the sun powers life at the surface, feeding plants, warming seas, lifting winds, and now you realize the Earth has its own sun buried deep inside, fainter, slower, but steady. It is not made of fusion, like the star in the sky, but it burns with the persistence of memory. You think about how this heat will someday fade, billions of years from now. The Earth will cool, its core will stop flowing, its magnetic field may vanish, the plates will freeze, the motion will end, but not tonight. Tonight, the heat still rises, the core still churns, the plates still drift, driven by this deep, patient fire, and you are here for a moment to feel it. You let it surround you, this invisible current of energy passed upward through miles of rock. You rise again, slowly, back through the mantle, where convection turns solid stone into liquid motion, back through the crust, where the plates float like cracked ice on a lava sea, and still the heat follows. It seeps upward, a soft breath rising through faults, warming springs, igniting volcanoes. You lie now on the surface again, but you are changed, you understand. The ground beneath you is not passive, it is powered, driven, alive in its own way. You breathe in the night air. It is cool, but you know that just kilometers below, it is not. There, the earth breathes heat. There, the story begins. You begin to wonder, where is all this movement going? What shape will the continents take, pushed by this hidden warmth? What will the world look like millions of years from now? Will the Atlantic continue to widen? Will California drift away? Will Africa meet Europe? You lie still and imagine maps not yet drawn. The heat may rise slowly, but it reshapes everything, even the future. Now that you've seen beneath the surface, now that you've floated through mantle and magma, now that you've felt the warm breath of Earth's core, let's go forward, not just by hours or years, but by millions of years. Let's drift into the future of the planet's body, not to rush it, but to understand what's waiting, because the plates are still moving, and they always will. Even as you lie still now, the ground beneath you inches forward. Continents do not sleep. They rearrange themselves like slow dancers across a cracked floor, and if you could watch them on a map, sped up 1,000,000 times, you'd see the Earth's surface flow like liquid dots. So tonight, we become time travelers. You drift upward first, above the clouds, above the curve of Earth. You hover where satellites sleep and comets pass, and from here you can see the plates like pieces of a breathing puzzle. South America sliding west, Australia inching north, India still pressing into Asia, and slowly, scene by scene, that puzzle begins to shift. You see the Atlantic Ocean widening as the Americas drift away from Europe and Africa, driven by the slow push at the mid-Atlantic ridge. You watch California creeping north, riding the Pacific Plate like a stowaway heading toward Alaska. Over the next 50 million years, it will rise along the coast, perhaps folding into mountains, perhaps slipping beneath new seas. You feel the Mediterranean shrinking as the African plate continues to drift northward. It presses against Europe. Inch by inch, the Alps rise higher. The sea may vanish, crumpled into folded crust and thrust faults, and in the distance, a new shape begins to form. ASUPERCONTINENT. It won't happen tomorrow, or in your lifetime, or in the memory of any civilization we know, but one day, in 200 million years, maybe more, the drifting plates will pull the continents together again, because this has happened before. You've heard of Pangaea, the ancient supercontinent that once held all land in one embrace. Before Pangaea, there was Rodinia. Before Rodinia, Columbia, Nuna, Yor. Supercontinents are not rare. They are Earth's way of breathing in. The plates drift apart, and the planet exhales. They gather again, and it inhales. You float now through the imagination of science, not fiction, but modeled futures, shaped by the laws we've already observed. Some call the next supercontinent Pangaea Proxima, a reunion formed by the closing of the Atlantic. North America and Eurasia collide. Africa squeezes upward. A vast interior desert blooms in the heart of the new landmass. Others imagine Novo Pangaea, where the Pacific closes instead. Asia and the Americas embrace. Australia folds into Asia's southern edge. Then there's Amasia, a slow merging of all northern continents around the Arctic Circle. A cold crown of crust, silent beneath icy skies. And finally, there's Orica, a beautiful symmetry where all continents move toward the equator, forming a ring of life encircling Earth's middle. Which future is true? No one knows for certain, but the motion is real. The drift is happening. The plates are not idle. You glide closer now, imagining the world transformed, where oceans were, now mountains, where deserts baked, now glaciers grow, where cities once stood, now silent forests. You imagine standing on this future Earth, placing your hand on rock not yet lifted, feeling the memory of seas that haven't yet evaporated. Time moves slowly for countenance, but it moves. You recall how the Himalayas rose, India charging north, the crust folding upward. You recall the trenches and ridges, the earthquakes and volcanoes, the patterns written in basalt and chalk dot. Now you watch new stories forming. A rift begins in East Africa. It deepens, spreads, and over tens of millions of years becomes an ocean. The African continent splits. A new island is born, floating between coasts that were once one. You observe Iceland drifting, eventually closing. The mid-Atlantic as the plates reversed. You see old crust pulled back into the mantle. Ocean floor sliding beneath new lands. Ash becoming magma. Mountains being ground into sand. You marvel at the balance, creation and destruction, spread and fold. A quiet oscillation of Earth's surface over deep time. You return briefly to the ring of fire, still active, still shaping. The edge of the Pacific, though the Pacific itself is shrinking, drawn inward by its encircling trenches. Islands like Japan may one day fold into Asia. Fragments of crust may be buried, or lifted into mountain chains not yet named. You float across the equator now. Watch as tropical bands shift with the continents, as wind patterns follow new coastlines, as species evolve, move, disappear, reappear, because life follows land, and land is never still. You remember this as you watch Australia drift. Right now, it's heading north at about 7 centimeters per year, faster than any other plate. In time, it may collide with Southeast Asia. It may help form mountains. It may change the shape of an entire ocean basin. And all of this, all of it, happens because of heat, because of convection, because of the patient pulse beneath your feet. You hover above the spinning planet again. You see the continents, as if from a dream, not fixed, not final, but fluid. A breathing world of wandering lands, of seafloors shifting like tides, of mountain ranges yet unborn. You think of your own life now, brief compared to tectonic time, but not meaningless, because understanding this motion, feeling the future in the crust, places you inside the planets. Poem, you live in a verse between supercontinents, a pause between collisions, a moment in the map. You return gently to Earth's surface. You lie on your back, on whatever ground you imagine beneath you, a forest, a plain, a desert, a city. But now you know this place is temporary. All places dot the continent you stand on is drifting. The ocean beside you is changing. The land beneath your feet is becoming something new, and this future is not sudden. It is slow, it is certain, it is drawn in heat and patience. And as you close your eyes, you begin to feel another kind of stillness, not the absence of motion, but the quiet of something always becoming. What does it mean, then, to lie still, if even the earth beneath you is changing? What is stillness when even silence drifts? You are ready now to come home to the quiet of the present, to the feeling of now. But first, let's return. Let's lie down one final time. Let's rest upon this world in motion, and listen once more for the silence that moves the world. You are lying down, not traveling anymore, not drifting through magma or time. You are simply still, and yet nothing beneath you is truly still. Your back rests on the crust of a moving planet, one wrapped in quiet momentum, spun by memory, warmed by fire. You close your eyes. You feel the surface beneath you, the floor, the grass, the bed, the mountain air. Whatever holds you tonight, it holds you gently, but it is also moving. You take a slow breath, and as you breathe in, Earth exhales heat. As you breathe out, Earth pulls itself into new shapes. With every breath, your stillness is wrapped in something larger, because the planet is always adjusting. It adjusts in silence, in sleep, in deep, unshakable patience. You think back to everything you've seen, the cracked puzzle of plates, the ridges that spread like breath underwater, the trenches that receive with grace, the mountains folded in remembrance, the slow earthquakes that hum instead of scream, the heat that stirs rock like dreams, the continents that wander across eras. And now, here you are, at rest. But never outside of that story. You shift slightly, just enough to notice how grounded you feel, how firm the earth feels beneath your spine. But you know it is not firm out of stillness. It is firm out of rhythm. Motion so slow, so vast, that it holds you like a tide holds a boat, like a breath holds a heartbeat. You are safe in that rhythm. You think of tectonic time, of how a mountain might rise 1 millimeter a year, how a rift may take 10 million years to open fully, how a continent might take 200 million years to arrive somewhere new. You realize that the word forever is relative. What feels permanent now, your country, your coastline, the shape of your horizon, is only one frame in a long film. Stillness is not absence of motion, it is balance. It is the pause between shifts, the breath between plates, the hush between continents, and you live inside that hush. You are held in place by forces too large to measure in a single life, but you felt them now. You've walked the length of a fault line. You've watched stone sink into magma. You've heard the mantle's breath and the ocean floor's whisper. You've listened to slow quakes and seen heat rise like thought through stone. Now you are back, not on the ridge, not in the trench, here where stillness lives. You press your hand to the ground. It does not speak, but it remembers everything, and perhaps that is enough. You recall how even silence can move mountains, how motion can happen quietly, how change does not always mean collapse. Sometimes change is growth you can't see yet. You imagine what lies below you now, the crust, the mantle, the core. You think of how much warmth is rising beneath your feet. You think of how the ground carries not just weight, but direction. It is going somewhere, so are you. Even as you sleep, your body continues its tiny rhythms, your heart, your breath, your cells. Everything within you moves just slowly enough to feel like stillness. You are the earth in miniature, a system of quiet forces, a balance of pressure and release, a history of heat and recovery, a story of things folding, opening, shifting within. You lie on the surface, but the story is inside you too. You are not separate from the planet's motion. You are part of it, and tonight, as you let go of the day, you trust that motion. You trust the slow pull of the plates, the gentle tilt of the continents, the soft, unending rise of magma beneath the crust. You trust that the world is always becoming, even when it looks still. Especially then, you listen for one final sound, not with your ears, but your mind, the movement of silence itself, the drift of thought into dream, the press of one moment into another, the weight of your body into sleep. You exhale, and so does the earth. You fall into stillness, and stillness moves you.